Welcome to the Flower Lounge, a place for conversations with wildly creative people and a little plant-loving wisdom to help you experience life in full bloom. I'm Katie Hess, flower alchemist and founder of LOTUSWEI, and I believe in a world where we're all living at our personal edge. Welcome to this special episode of Moonshine. This is an unusual episode. It is one that we considered and you all asked for it again and again on social media and through email. So we have decided to bring it to you. Actually, Kristina Wingeier has decided to bring it to you. A full overview of 2020 starting now-ish, right?
It's always now.
Yeah, I mean, we figured since we do pretty in-depth monthly, where are we at? Mid-February?
Almost, yeah. We're going to do big, broad brushstrokes of the major happenings. And I think Katie's going to hold a little Saturn energy and keep us in quarters. And so this will be big brushstrokes because, again, we go over all the details in our monthly report. So,
but I would love to ask you, because you said something before we started recording that I didn't totally understand. And that is, you said that this is a bridge year. What does that mean? Or you feel like it's a bridge year?
Well, I feel like it's a bridge year because we're in between, we're ending and beginning two very big cycles this year that don't happen all the time. So that seems important. I mean, one, in fact, is at the beginning of the year and one is at the end of the year. So that feels like a bridge right there. And then Saturn is finishing up the time in Capricorn this year, and that's a 3-year cycle. So but Saturn's also dipping into Aquarius for a minute this year and going back into Capricorn. So it's like we're on this bridge and we're leaving stuff behind, but we're not quite where we're going. And we can't really see very clearly necessarily. We'll get glimpses of it, I think, but it's a lot of inner work that we have to do this year. And I think that's indicated by all the personal planets going retrograde this year. It seems to me that indicates a lot of internal rewiring so that we can create a new world that is better for everyone. That's the big agenda of this year, is really moving from these kind of old paradigms and belief systems that are rooted in inequality and this hierarchical kind of dominant submission dance into this enlightened society where truth, equality, and true freedom can exist for everyone. That's what we're trying to move into as we move into this age of Aquarius. That's kind of happening, but not quite there yet.
Aquarius.
Yeah, the age of. So that's why I feel like it's a bridge year. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Saturn's kind of a big deal. I mean, gosh. I mean, I even don't know that much about astrology, only bits I pick up from you, but that sounds like a big change from Capricorn to Aquarius.
It's a huge change. It's a huge change on the collective. It's a really big change in everybody's life because by the end of 2020, we're not going to be so hyper-focused on Capricorn.
Well, quick question while we're on this topic. Do you feel like this year is sort of like the last year, not the last year, but of this kind of set of 3 that we really need to make sure our ducks in a row, like every T's crossed, I's are dotted, we've like prepared things in a way?
I mean, I think it's very important to prepare, but I think we're doing a lot of reassessment in order to prepare. Because gotcha. I don't know how you prepare for the unknown.
Since the beginning of the year, there's so many things going on in the business. It's like redoing the insurance and redoing the legal and all the sort of
Jupiter and Capricorn. That sounds like Jupiter and Capricorn to me.
Gotcha. Okay.
And that's like Jupiter has come into Capricorn to kind of clean up and fertilize the seeds that are actually going to grow and we can harvest from, where we've been doing a lot of letting go in Capricorn because of the South Node in Capricorn, because of the eclipses on the South Node, because of Saturn and Pluto doing their big thing, which was how we began the year, was with that huge Saturn-Pluto conjunction. That's a 33 to 38 year cycle between Saturn and Pluto. So that coming together as an ending of something and a beginning of something. That's where we started the year. And it's it's an intense cycle, right? Because Saturn's about time and structure and laws and boundaries, and Pluto's like this kind of composting, regenerating, death and transformation and rebirthing kind of energy. And Capricorn's a lot about governments and cooperations and the economy and structure, but it's also about ancient wisdom, and natural resources and things like that. And so these two coming together is showing us that we need, like, any kind of corruption or things that are no longer working is going to be exposed, especially in the institutions, governments, and banks and all of that. But in your personal life, right, there's the macro and then there's the micro. And we've all been working so hard with Capricorn energy for a while now because of Saturn, because of the eclipses. And so there is a big cycle coming, a 30-some year cycle. But what's, even bigger is that these two planets, Saturn and Pluto, the last time they were in Capricorn was in 1519. So that's 15. Yeah, that was like the age of the Protestant Reformation.
Whoa.
So it's really big. They initiate very big change and exposure.
Do you know anything about the Protestant Reformation?
Well, that was when Martin Luther nailed those theses up on the church wall because they were exposing the corruption of the Catholic Church and all the way that, you would pay for, I don't know the words, but there are ways that, you would pay to have your sins taken away, or, it's they've got a little bit of a bloody history, the Catholic Church. So Martin Luther was like done with it. And, and the Protestant Reformation was this kind of breaking away into Protestants, which is a whole bunch of different sect of Christians than Catholics, and Catholics and Orthodox have a more similar vibe. And then there's Protestants. And so that was a big deal, exposed something that had been plugging along for over 1,500 years, right? The church, and splintered it. So that's just one example, right? And around that time in the 1500s, Sikhism, which is a younger religion, also came online. And that was this kind of response to Hinduism and Muslim, more conservative, So it's just like this newness, exposure and newness and kind of a collective rebirth.
That's also...
Look at her little fingers.
That's also when the alchemists started prescribing their patients to go drink dewdrops.
No, really?
Right around that time period, yeah.
That's cool. See? In like new things, new ideas and new belief systems. And, it's rocky though, right? It's not always comfortable in the macro and in the collective. We're seeing that, we're feeling that. So we really have to master our own domain, right? That Capricorn in our own chart and whatever that means for you. And because you've been working on it for a while, right? And we've already had this conjunction. It happened right around that first eclipse of the year. So it's behind us, but it is initiating or ushering in a new 30-odd year cycle. And that's important, right? That's an important thing. We're releasing the past and stepping into the unknown this year. And
so we've been initiated.
We've been initiated.
Yeah. What would be, I hope you don't mind making this more conversational than we usually have.
It's great. I love conversations.
What would be what you would recommend folks if they were going to ask themselves one question to elicit sort of like the way they were initiated or what they were initiated into, or should they just kind of look at January and say what happened? What were the themes?
Well, actually, I have a question here that I wrote down, and it is, how are you managing your resources? And if you want to get nuanced with your Capricorn, what house that is in your chart, how are you embodying those values in your life? Like, what are you ending? What are you beginning in that part of your life? And then how are you managing your resources, both, like money, but your energy, right? Your time, really a lot about your time. How do you structure your time? How do you manage your time? Are you kind of in a place where you're in this belief that we always have to be growing and going and active and doing, or are you letting yourself have enough time to rest and restore, right? If Capricorn is also about ancient wisdom and the earth, right? And the resources of the earth. I mean, we've seen what happens when we deplete the resources of the planet. The same thing happens to, we're little planets, right? So I feel like, how are you managing your resources is a good question to consider.
Love that.
So Saturn will be in Capricorn. Saturn has been in Capricorn since December of 2017. Pluto's been in Capricorn since 2008 and will be there until 2024. So Pluto's been there a while. The Pluto thing has been happening Pluto has a very long orbit because it's way out there in space, right? So it moves really slowly. That's why it's important for these collective shifts. And Pluto and Saturn it takes 28 years or so to go around the entire wheel. What would be 3 times 12? What's 3 times 27? No, what's 3 times 12?
36.
36. Oh my God, I just got lost in math. I'm going to step away from the math. In any event, they don't come together very often.
Good quiz. 36.
33 to 38 years. It's happening now.
Okay.
Yeah, or it happened. It happened. We've been initiated, as you said.
Yeah.
And then also, of course, in Capricorn is Jupiter this year. And Jupiter stepped into Capricorn at the very end of last year and is moving through Capricorn. And there are 3 important conjunctions with Jupiter and Pluto this year. So they really are about these kind of indicators of the slow and eventual growth that's happening. So they're coming together a few times, and those are big conjunctions. The outer planets, because their orbits are longer, when they come together, they create shifts in the collective because they're slow moving. And so it's like evolutionary. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So these Jupiter-Pluto conjunctions are little how do you say that word?
Harbinger?
Someone out there will correct us. Of hope, of growth, of fertilizing, and the hard work paying off, right? These are little okay. And if you want to get really, astro nerdy, between 22 and 24 degrees Capricorn, that's where they're all happening, because then Pluto moves slowly, right? So this is kind of what we're being initiated into, is completing our Capricorn assignment that we've been working pretty hard on for the last 3 years.
I'll say.
Okay. So we've been initiated. What's next? Conversational Kate.
Ding. Ding. Does that sort of encompass the first quarter? It's just like we've been initiated and now we're kind of...
Well, when does the first quarter go to in your mind?
So it would be January, February, March.
The other thing that's happening in the first quarter is that we're going to have our first Mercury retrograde.
Yes.
Talked about that a lot.
Pisces.
In Pisces, yes. So that's happening. And dates for that will be February 16th to March 9th. Okay. So that is happening in the first quarter. And then Saturn is moving into Aquarius on March 21st for a few months. I'm trying to find the dates. Hold on. Yes, March 21st until July 1st. So Saturn's going to dip into Aquarius, which is this kind of future visioning of what this focus on Aquarius is going to be in your life and also for the collective. So we're looking for more social justice, innovations in technology, this kind of enlightened society, this idea of an enlightened society. And, did I say innovative technology? Yeah, to navigate these immense pressures that we put on the planet, really. I think we can solve the problems. I really do, if we can get the funds in the right hands. And we're going to get a preview of what it's going to feel like and look like, especially in our personal life, I think, of the Aquarius part of your chart. It's going to get a lot of action next year. So start to get familiar with that, with this in the first quarter, the Saturn shift. Saturn is going to be there for a couple of months.
So you're telling us that the end of March through the end of June, essentially, will give us a window into what a little bit of the vibe in 2021 for us will feel like?
Yes, specifically in the Aquarius part of your house chart, because that's where Saturn's going to spend the next 3 years, going into Aquarius for the next 3 years at the end of the year.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So we're getting a little preview.
Nice.
Yeah. Those are the most important kind of big things in the first quarter until the end of March. Yes.
And then we'll have April, May, June.
Okay, April, May, and June, quarter two. So let's see. Well, Venus moves into Gemini on April 3rd, and Venus is going to be in Gemini for a minute or two, all the way until August 7th because of
Whoa.
Yeah, this is what happens when she goes retrograde. Spends a lot of time in one place.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's happening in April. Venus moves into Gemini for an extra long stay. We have one of those Jupiter-Pluto conjunctions. The first one that I mentioned is happening on April 4th. So that's an April thing. And in May is really pretty big. May we have a lot going on in May. The first thing that happens pretty early on is on May 5th, the nodes change. So we'll talk about this because this is a big shift. The North and South node are traveling opposite one another. They travel through a pair of signs over the course of 18 months. And all of the eclipses will happen in those signs for the most part. We're going to talk about how that kind of bleeds over. So we've had the nodes in North Node in Cancer and the South Node in Capricorn since November of 2018. Done a lot of growth. North Node in Cancer, a lot of letting go. South Node in Capricorn. We've talked ad nauseum about that, so we're not going to get into that. That we're ending this nodal cycle. And what's going to happen is the North Node will move into Gemini and the South Node into Sagittarius. So the nodes travel backwards. So they enter at the end of the sign. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
So it's bringing a new focus to your chart, a new axis between two signs. And the axis of Gemini and Sagittarius is a lot about communication, right? The North Node in Gemini is ruled by Mercury. What does Mercury do all the time? 3 times a year. Mercury goes retrograde. So, the North Node in Gemini, the North Node is our highest potential. It's where we need to grow. It's our growing pains, right? And in Gemini, we need some fresh perspectives on that part of our life. We need some new conversations. We need to ask some good questions. We need to learn how to listen. And there's a relay in a conversation. It's listening and talking, right? It's a back and forth thing. We need more play and curiosity, right?
Oh,
with Gemini.
I like that.
Yeah, and more objectivity, right?
Oh, right, because y'all see every side of the story, right?
Exactly, yeah. And then the South Node in Sagittarius, ruled by Jupiter, is indicating things that we're clearing out or letting go of, right? And with this, we're letting go of a lot of this kind of idealism and ideologies, and especially like zealous kind of, super opinionated, my way or the highway kind of beliefs in your own self. You got to examine those. And especially, the most important thing will be to look at the houses where this is happening in your natal chart. You're kind of questioning your philosophy of life or your spirituality. There's a lot around, since it's a Jupiter ruled sign, there's a lot around excess that we're letting go of, right? Jupiter can get a little hedonistic, a little all consuming, inviting you to see if you've been taking on more than you can really handle, more than you can manage, just because you just can't say no, right? So that's the shift that's happening with the nodes, bringing us a fresh eclipse cycle coming up. But really, for everyone out there, look at your natal chart, because the nodes are going to be activating a particular, 2 houses of your chart in a particular way for 18 months. And it's important to understand that, how you can work with that individually, right?
So we can pull our individual charts and look at where Gemini and Sagittarius are. What house they're in?
Exactly. And you're growing the Gemini and you're letting go, right, in the Sag. So that happens on May 5th, the shift. So we're moving into a new 18-month cycle in May. That's a quarter 2 thing. Venus goes retrograde on May 14th through June 25th. All right. So Venus retrograde is a 40-day period to review and reconsider your attitudes and beliefs around love, money, relationships, self-worth. Okay. So I think communication is going to be a huge thing for this Venus retrograde, and also gender roles, right? Gemini is a very fluid sign. It's the twins. I mean, there's just this kind of fluidity and non-binary thing that can go on in Gemini. And so I think gender roles and relationships, I think, of course, we're seeing a lot happening, around gender fluidity and non-binary pronouns and all kinds of things. And I think this will come up a lot. We'll be looking at that a little more maybe in our lives during this Venus retrograde. So that's in May. And those are the highlights for May. I have my notes organized in a different way, so I'm going a little slower than I might usually. And then June is our second. We get into eclipses in June. We get into our second Mercury retrograde in June. And with the eclipses this year, because the nodes have so recently changed signs, the eclipses in the summer are these kind of bridging, where the first eclipse is on June 5th. It's a lunar eclipse in Sagittarius. But then the solar eclipse on the 21st is in Cancer. So this is because the eclipses are about where the sun and the moon are, right? New moons and full moons. And when the nodes they can be close by, but in another sign. So for instance, the node will be like at 29 degrees Gemini, and the new moon will be at 0 degrees Cancer. So therefore we have a Cancer eclipse under a different nodal cycle. So we're really, really, really like June and July are the real closing the chapters on the eclipses in Cancer and Capricorn. July 4th and 5th, depending on where you live, is a lunar eclipse in Capricorn. That takes us into Q3, but I just wanted to include it with the eclipses. So that's 3 eclipses in June and July.
Wow. And 2 out of the 3 are still kind of from this old cycle. So just like booting out the last little pieces.
Yeah. And the solar eclipses this year are the more potent. The lunar eclipses, not to say that the first lunar eclipse we had this year wasn't intense. It was quite emotional. But the lunar eclipses are all called penumbral eclipses. And this is when the moon is just like moving through a very faint part of the Earth's shadow. So they're not super dramatic. They're much more ephemeral and subtle and very emotional. Whereas the solar eclipses, this one is an annular eclipse, which is that ring of fire eclipse. So almost the whole sun is covered. And then there's an eclipse at the end of the year that's a total solar eclipse. So the solar eclipses are very potent this year, which is, really a lot about our consciousness and our awareness. And whereas the lunar eclipses are more about emotions and feelings and the body, things like that. So that's Q2, I believe. Are we on Q2? I don't know.
We'll say like beginning of summer-ish, right? What
Q2.
Is that?
We finished Q2, right? April, May, and June.
Yep.
Okay. And then July begins Q4. No, 3. See? I'm a math major. I make my own math. This is how we count in my world. 1, 3, 4, 2. Okay, so July. Saturn goes back into Capricorn on the 1st. So we get back into like having to go clean up our little mess. We have that lunar eclipse in Capricorn on the 4th or 5th, depending on where you live. And that's the big stuff in July. Those are the big things. And then August. Actually, I'm backing up. I must mention something. And the thing I mention is that Mars moves into Aries on June 27th. And the reason I mention that is that Mars will be in Aries for 6 months because of the retrograde. Just in case. She's like, it is kind of intense. It's a long journey in Aries.
I mean, I guess Mars is happy there, right?
Mars is happy for a while until the retrograde. Then Mars is very, very unhappy. What's that? I think there's a nursery rhyme about somebody being very, very good until they're very, very bad. That's what Mars in Aries is. This year. So I just wanted to mention at the end of June that Mars moves into Aries because it's going to start to activate that Aries area. And that's going to be important for later. So I had to bring that in. And August, well, did I mention we have our second Mercury retrograde in July and June?
Briefly.
Yeah. So Mercury is retrograde from June 17th to July 12th in Cancer, bridging Q2 and Q3. All right. So that is important.
In what sign? Does it matter? Mercury retrograde in
Cancer.
Oh, Cancer.
Just a little more just to make sure we're finished with Cancer and Capricorn.
Right.
It's been a long 3 years.
Unpack some more crabby.
Yeah. Anyone with major placements in cardinal signs has been getting their butt kicked. I know it. So it's been hard, but we're really almost there. And once we're done with this, by the end of the year, we're really out of it. But we're finishing up a lot this summer with that Cancer Capricorn axis, I believe. And then August, nothing major happening in August. No, nothing I need to talk about, I don't think. September, is that still Q3? I think it must be. This is when Mars goes retrograde. September is a big month. So Mars retrograde happens every 2 years. See, this is the thing. Like we have 3 Mercury retrogrades a year at least. Venus goes retrograde every 18 months, so it doesn't happen all the time. And Mars goes retrograde every 2 years. So this year, all of the personal planets, the mind, love, and desire, Mars is a lot about action and vitality and energy and drive, right? So this retrograde is from September 10th to November 13th. It begins in Q3 and goes to Q4. And this is an invitation to really reassess what you want in your Aries house and to review your actions of the past 2 years, right? Since the last time Mars was retrograde. And it's really a time where it is not a good time to be on pushing things through that you're having, it's not really a time to begin new things. It will be really hard if you do. If you need to, you need to, but there may be a lot of roadblocks, a lot of stalls along the way. The more you can have spaciousness and not so strict timelines and allow for an ebb and flow in your levels of energy, because Mars has a lot to do with your vitality. And when Mars is retrograde, it's not so vital. The more you can make time and space for that, the better. And the more that you can realize that people might really be in bad moods for a minute. I mean, it is election season, so and of course, look at your Aries house, and anyone with important placements in Aries, this is going to be a big retrograde for them. So, and then of course, Aries is a cardinal sign, right? So as I mentioned, these cardinal signs are beginning so much work because of Saturn and the eclipses and all of that. And now we have this Aries retrograde coming in to offer us the challenges that we can, move through in order to initiate the next Mars phase, the next Mars cycle in our own lives, I think. So Mars retrograde it's a little ugly. It's not the best. It's kind of, I think, my least favorite retrograde, to be honest with you. Do you have any experience, like any memories or experiences of Mars retrogrades?
I just, the only thing I remember is things feeling a little slow, like a little sludgy, kind of like, gosh, I really want to get this done, but I'm kind of just not, like I'm spinning my wheels kind of thing, feeling like things go slower.
Totally. And Aries is cardinal fire. It's the first sign of the zodiac. It doesn't like to go slow. It doesn't it's very
impulsive. Go now.
Right? Yeah. So that's the extra frustration. It's a Mars ruled sign, right? Mars, like you said, Mars and Aries, Mars is happy. Mars is happy until Mars doesn't get what Mars wants, and Mars is tired, and then Mars gets cranky. Yeah. So that's a big deal. And it's a 2-month period of time where the planet's retrograde. And because of the way this slowing down and the speeding back up, that's why Mars is in Aries for 6 months.
So if you were running a business, what would be the sorts of activities you would recommend during a Mars retrograde?
Well, I mean, you have to go on with business as normal, but I would try to be as spacious as possible, right? I would try to avoid super strict deadlines. I would avoid waiting till the last minute to do things. And I would really try to allow myself to trust that even if things slow down, that it's not necessarily that's how it's always going to be. Like, I think it asks us to trust and to clean up some things, right? Reassess some things so that we can then move forward in that part of our life with more clarity and more kind of alignment and take action. So yeah, spaciousness, trust that it's not always going to be frustrating or slow.
Go on a retreat.
For 2 months. Why not? Do it. Yeah. So.
And then, wow, that's September, October. And then you said there was a huge eclipse in December or at the end of the year?
Yes. So September, October, let me look at October real quick. Well, we have another Mercury retrograde before we get to the end of the year.
What?
Let's not leave Mercury out. Mercury prankster and will play a trick on you if you ignore Mercury. The last retrograde of the year for Mercury happens October 13th to November 3rd in Scorpio and a little bit in Libra. And the interesting thing about this retrograde is that Mercury stations direct on Election Day in the United States and in Libra, which means Mercury is just standing still in an air sign and paper ballots, people. That's all I'm going to say. Paper ballots. Mail it in early. I think it's going to be a bit of a mess trying to know what results are. I think it might be a little.
Because things are just sort of like time stands still.
Yeah, well, apparently also the last time that Mercury stationed direct or retrograde on an election day was 2000. And that year had a lot of confusion around who won the election. There was this whole like hanging chads on the ballots. And it was just this big kerfuffle around what happened. Mercury was stationing retrograde at that time, but it was also in Libra. So it's just this kind of like when Mercury is about conversations and movement and technology, and that's a day where there's a lot of all of that.
And it just, slows down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or it doesn't really move. So probably along lines at the election, at the polls, like vote early or go, you know what I mean? Just
avoid it.
Yeah. So that's happening October and November. And then we get into more eclipses in November, the end of November. We have a lunar eclipse in Gemini on November 30th. And then on December 14th, we have a total solar eclipse in Sagittarius. So now we're really in the Gemini Sagittarius eclipse season, cycle, story, whatever it is for you by the end of the year. And I didn't mention those other 2 Jupiter-Pluto conjunctions, but the second one is in June on June 29th, and the last one is in November on November 12th. So I think they're important to pay attention to. And then the last thing that one of the big things that's happening, the second like really big thing, although it feels like everything's kind of big, right? Because we're doing all these brush strokes and not talking about any of the minutia in between. So it's all kind of major things, is that the great conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn is happening on the solstice, which is this year, the 21st, 18, 19, 20, 21, the 21st of December. And so this is the beginning of a 20-year cycle. And every time Jupiter and Saturn come together, they come together every 20 years or so. And, Jupiter is really a lot about economic, political, and religious issues. Saturn's a lot about systems of law and order and time. So when these two come together, and they're very different, like, we think about Jupiter as very expansive, right? And we think about Saturn as very contractive, and the two of them coming together is been studied for a long time. But when they come together, it really is time for a new social order. And so in Aquarius, again, we have this focus on air and innovation and enlightenment and humanitarianism and things like that. We are leaving an Earth cycle, the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, the Great Conjunction. These are 200-year cycles that kind of come together every 20 years. And we're letting go of the Earth cycle, which is happening for like the last 200 years, where we were focused on material world, land ownership and accumulation and depletion of the natural resources, commodification of everything. And now we're moving into this air for the next little while, where it's more about information and airspace and the atmosphere, growth in humanitarian concerns and technological innovations and ideological evolution and revolution. So this is happening at the very end of the year, and it's happening on solstice, which is an important, one of the important days in the solar Earth calendar. And traditionally a time of renewal and rebirth of the sun, right? Where we go from, or in the very the sun is in the northern hemisphere at least, the sun is, or in the longest, darkest time of the year, and the light starts to come back after that. So that's the symbolism that's kind of woven in with this Saturn-Jupiter conjunction at the end of the year. So it's a new epoch, right? It's a new major change at the macro level. And then on the personal level, we're going from this intense Capricorn focus where we're going to be, the Aquarius focus. Saturn will be in Aquarius for 3 years, Jupiter for the year. And in 2024, Pluto will be in Aquarius. So we're really moving into a new focal point in the chart. And then 2021 is a whole different game, right? Saturn and Jupiter are out of Capricorn. We're not having eclipses on the cardinal axis anymore. It's all going to be mutable. It's a lot of different things happening, but we won't go down that road. We are to stop at the end of 2020.
But why? Okay.
Because I can't count. Because all I can say, okay, I'll tell you, want me to give you one little tidbit for 2021?
Yeah, well, I'm real curious what it means when you move from cardinal to mutable. Is it like more emotional or less like fixed and stubborn, or what does that mean? Change.
Well, I mean, it's just that cardinal signs initiate and take action. Fixed signs hold things stable, and mutable signs transition from one thing to the next. They're very changeable. And so we've had all these eclipses in cardinal signs for 18 months. And so people with strong cardinal placements have been having a lot of growth and change happening in their life, more than other people. I can speak from experience because I'm a Cancer rising. And a lot of my students and clients who have been coming in over these past 18 months, a lot of people with a lot of Cancer and Capricorn placements who are struggling. And so now the eclipses will be moving into Gemini and Sagittarius, which are mutable signs. And so it's just going to start to affect a whole different crop of people. I mean, some of us, I'm a Gemini sun, so I'm going to get it again, but in whatever. It's not going to be as bad, I don't think. And the energy of these eclipses, not only by the sign placements, but by the mutability of these signs, is a lot of shape shifting. It feels like a lot of things going from one state to another. And the best way really to understand this on the personal level is to know what parts of your life you're being asked to grow in and what parts of your life you're being asked to really let go of too much so that it can be more streamlined and.
Okay. So big review this year. How our mind works, how we love, how we desire, how we value, how we do our money, how we act, how we drive ourselves, our energy. A lot of review. A lot of Roto-Rooter.
Yeah. I mean, all the personal planets are going retrograde, right? I mean, that's all about us and all of the things that keep us interacting with each other, like what you said, like love and relationships and communication and all of that. So, yeah, and the eclipses shifting and the big cycle beginning at the beginning of the year and then one at the end of the year, and the usual retrogrades with Mercury and all the other planets, of course, go retrograde, all the outer planets, and we'll talk about those in the episodes. But yeah, I think it's how has it felt for you so far this year? It's felt has it felt easy? Has it felt challenging? What are you noticing already? What are we recording on? We're recording on February 10th. What do how is 2020 feeling to you so far?
2020 feels actually like it's kind of cranking, moving a lot is moving forward.
Awesome.
But a lot of change too.
Mm-hmm.
Very different from last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it feels
no more playing around. And not even like I was playing around, but just a lot more serious framework and commitment.
Yeah.
It's let's go all in or not.
I think we're at that point in general.
Less, I don't want to say dicking around because, not we're screwing around, but less less like exploration and trying, and more just like make the whole pie or not, like not just try a little sliver. Like either you're going to have the whole pie and there's a reason for it, or not.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
How about you?
January was hard. I mean, to me, it feels very serious as well. It feels like it's important to be clear this year. And I don't mean like to know everything, but just to keep yourself like uncluttered as much as possible energetically, and to really be able to look at what you thought was true. Like this is what I've been doing, and honesty, right, about what really is true. And even though everything feels completely unknown to me, it feels like a year that I have to really cultivate my trust muscle, that if showing up and doing those things will bring the success and rewards or whatever that is that I need, like in the physical realm. But it's felt quite challenging. And at the same time, it's felt more spacious and I feel freer. And that's due to my own personal circumstances. But through people that I know and I haven't actually had a lot of client work this year. It's interesting. That's really gotten quiet for a minute. But I have people that I work with regularly, and I have a lot of people in my life. And people have been lots of big changes happening this year. People moving, people leaving relationships, like new jobs, it's a lot of shifts and changes. And it feels like almost like we're moving everything around so that by the end of the year, we're in a good place to really take it to the next level, right? Not to say that we may not, I think we're leveling up all year long, like meeting our own growth edges and really trying to not move beyond in this like really big way, but just in this really true way. And that's actually very micro, it feels like. So I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. I was telling Taylor the other day, like, wow, I feel like that, if we ever had a time of like, and now is a little lull where we get to kind of breathe, don't have that anymore.
Well, we have to make space for those though.
But it's like a different kind of action. It's like there's so much single pointedness in the action. There's so much focus and clarity around what it is, that there's enough awareness that creates spaciousness. So even if you feel like there's never a dull moment, it's not necessarily overextension into exhaustion land. It's more just like, oh, wow, another thing. Okay, handle it. Oh, wow, another thing. Okay, handle it. Oh, another thing. Handle it. Like on a stair step, how you said up leveling, like up.
Oh, yeah. And isn't that just kind of like always like that in life? Whether it's like you always have a deadline to meet, you know what I mean? Or there's always another thing. Like that's just what life is. And I think it's a lot about pacing and your attitude about it. Like, if you're not happy and you're not like loving what you're up to, you really got to change it this year. You've got to free yourself. I'm not saying every moment's going to be complete joy and bliss and like whatever, but like, even I do work that I love and I get really frustrated with my schedule or with things, and it's all my attitude. And so this year I'm just experimenting with having a new attitude about it all and knowing that there's always going to be another thing to do, but that's what I signed up for. And so just keep doing it, keep showing up. Wonder how everyone else out there is feeling.
One question for you. Mm-hmm. If you were going to go on a summer trip, would you choose June, July, August, or July, August, September?
I guess it would depend where I was going and what I was doing. What are my choices again?
June to August or July to September. And it would be for building something. It sounds to me like
I might pick July to September.
Even though September's got all that crazy stuff going on.
June's kind of, I don't know, eclipse season, I mean, it's fine. I think it really depends on the chart. There's a Mercury retrograde from the middle of June to, into the middle of July-ish. So that just feels like snafus around travel, but that doesn't mean that you can't travel. Just make space for the snafus, right? And quite frankly, if you like to kind of work with unexpected changes and things like that, then traveling in eclipse season might just be perfect for you, right? If you can go with that kind of like plans might change and things might be come out of the woodwork that you weren't expecting and stuff like that.
What about Mars going retrograde in September?
Well, that is such a long freaking retrograde, and it's just at the beginning. So like your people might be frustrated and cranky, but it's not eclipses and it's not a Mercury retrograde. So I feel like I don't know. We have to look at your chart. We have to look at your chart. Ultimately, it's also kind of like how it's all affecting you.
Right. So if anybody's interested in how does this affect my specific chart? How does this affect the chart of my business? Obviously, you know that you can ring up Kristina and have her take a look at precisely how all of this is more targeting you.
Yes. Always.
Otherwise, it sounds like, not a bad year. Just a little crazy.
Not a bad year.
Not a bad year.
Just a year to level up and a year in between. I feel like we're in between this year. Not that things won't happen, babies are going to be born and new businesses and new things. There's a lot of unsettled energy and we're just moving through. I have done some, I study all kinds of arcs of time and this progression of the equinoxes, which is this change of the age, right? From the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. And from what I understand, it's first of all, nobody agrees on the exact dates of these things anyway. But the period in between is like there's a wobble. You don't go just like through a doorway and now we're in a new place and everything's just new. It's like there's a lot of change and shake up and kind of trying to figure out how to do the new thing. And I feel we're really in the wobble. We're in that kind of like shake up, particle accelerating kind of place. And yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot to be human right now.
Wobble, wobble. Let's do the wobble.
Weebles wobble, but they don't fall down.
And reform.
Do you remember Weebles?
Are they like roly-poly potato heady kind of things?
There were these like little Cadbury egg looking creatures, but they were plastic, I think. And that was their whole ad campaign. Weebles wobble, but they don't fall down. So be like a Weeble. You can wobble, just don't fall down. And if you fall up, find a way to get back up. Right? If you fall up. Did I say if you fall up?
Yeah.
Ooh, okay. I'm going to go with it. Fall up.
Fall up and wobble.
So they say fall down 7 times, get up 8 or something like that. It's like that.
Okay. Happy 2020, folks.
It's a fine year.
Yeah. Okay. And if you have more specific questions, you can reach out to Kristina. You can find her at Kristina Wingeier on Instagram and on her fabulous website to get more specific details. Anything you want to mention that you're up to this year?
I'm teaching a masterclass every month this year. So teaching basic astrological principles as well as deep dives into the personal retrogrades, a class on eclipses and the nodal shift, all that. So those happen monthly. My newsletter is the best place to be signed up if you want to be in the know about that. So and then consults and yeah. I'm not starting a new teaching gig in September. I'm not launching a new program this year. If I launch, it's the next iteration of something or a new big thing, it'll be in 2021. So I'm not going to work because that retrograde in Mars is happening in my career house. So I'm doing a lot of reassessment around that, about what I really want to do moving forward. So
we're teaching a lot this year. We're doing a lot of teaching, a lot of workshops, a lot of talking, a lot of lining up our practitioner program.
At the Sand Center? Sand? How do I say it wrong?
Yeah, I mean, that would be here, but also Chicago, New York, Charleston, perhaps Miami, definitely near San Francisco in the fall.
But when you say lining up your practitioner program, what does that mean?
We're going to start out teaching a lot of basic workshops for folks who want to just learn more about how to incorporate flower essences into their lives and their families and friends. And then from there, we will make available a program for folks who are already practitioners for 5+ years in some modality like Chinese medicine or coaching or what have you. And they want to learn how to use flower essences really in depth in their practices. So we're, moving away from, in the years past, we really focused on creating cool experiences. And now we're just like teaching, very, very committedly teaching.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think I've been like dreaming about you guys doing some kind of practitioner training for a long time. I don't know why. I feel like I talked to you about that at one point back in the day, or maybe it was just a fantasy.
And it's finally happening.
Congratulations. That's awesome. That's really cool. Flower essences and vibrational remedies. That's like such 21st century medicine. It's so important. It's so easy to shift your mood state with things like that. It's just really powerful. And the way you know it works, you use it with animals and babies. And And then they change right before your eyes, and you're like, okay, right? Quantum, energetic, vibrational. I don't know how you describe it, but those are some of the words that I think about with these kinds of tools. Very Age of Aquarius.
So fun.
Wonderful. Will this be online, or will people have to come and train in person?
In person.
In Arizona?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you'll have a hub for that where they won't have to go like all around the world to travel.
Right. But we may go around the world, so we'll probably do some version of the practitioner training program in Singapore in the summer.
So yeah, that makes sense.
So we can cover both hemispheres.
Beautiful. That's exciting, Katie. That's like a next level for LOTUSWEI.
For sure. Yeah, I feel it. Everybody's commitment is the big word. I don't know. That's the word I feel for this year is commitment. It's like, are you in?
I think that's that Jupiter and Capricorn.
Jupiter and Capricorn.
What are you committed to? Make it grow. But don't expect it to happen overnight.
Nope.
Right? Like steady, keep at it. Focus on the important thing.
Yeah, it's like building the team that's going to get you there.
Yes.
Or resources or what have you.
Yeah. Or mindset. Yeah. Beautiful. When will we expect to see this in the States?
Talks and workshops in the spring, and then more in-depth things happening in the fall.
Might have to come visit you. Take a 2-month vacation. 2-month retreat where I'm working in person in Phoenix. Oh, who knows? I have no idea what this is going to be happening by the end of the year. Who knows?
We're so lucky to be alive, aren't we?
We are. It's an honor and a privilege, and sometimes quite a conundrum, but hey, we're here.
So if any of you are looking for more dates and you haven't been taking notes and you want to be able to look back at this later during the year, we will post up a blog post on lotuswei.com on the podcast page where we'll have some of the dates that Kristina mentioned so you can plug those in on your calendars for 2020. Thank you so much, Kristina.
My pleasure, Katie. Thanks everyone for listening and for requesting this episode.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for listening to The Flower Lounge. I'm Katie Hess, and we'll be releasing a new podcast every Wednesday. If you like what you heard or you know someone who might be touched by our conversation, share it with them. And don't forget to subscribe. To find out what your favorite flowers mean about you, take the quiz at LOTUSWEI.com.